Excellent. So again, thanks everyone for attending. Thanks to Spark Plus for organising. I've just made my way from a lunch that Spark Plus organised as well. So they're running a number of sessions today, and you guys in Singapore and down here in Perth as well. So we'll crack into it. Important notice, I'll leave that as an exercise for the reader. Corporate snapshot, apologies, I do need to update this. The share price as of right now is sitting around 11 cents. You can see in the graph there, we took a bit of punishment sort of over the end of May and June between sort of the traditional Australian tax time and a few other things. One of our large holders has had to sell down their holding due to some issues that they're going through. So that's been going on, but we remain pretty strong. Cash balance is good. We've got plenty of fuel in the tank for what we want to do. So, the share price is obviously a little bit disheartening, but it doesn't actually, change materially what we're trying to do. In the top 10 holders there, you'll see Briar Resources with a strong position. The Tumblegum asset was spun out of Briar, and Briar remain a very large shareholder and a big part of kind of the success of the company. We kind of stand on the shoulders of giants there. They did a lot of the early work with Tumblegum, so we've sort of leveraged off that work, to make it our own. But using what they did before us. Just quickly on the board, so Ian Stewart, the chairman, experienced geologist with also a background working sort of in the finance side of things. Extensive experience, very knowledgeable, and has been a sort of instrumental in getting Star set up. He remains heavily involved with Briar as well. Ashley Jones, another guy with very strong geology and finance kind of background. He was working as the exploration manager for Australian Vanadium and for Briar, and has recently stepped up as now actually the CEO for Briar Resources. So as you can imagine, it means that the connections between those companies are very strong. Makes it easy for us to all get along and get things done. Stephen Struble, the other non-executive director, finance guy based over east. He comes out of Melbourne. Very strong broking and finance background. Stephen spends a lot of time over here, especially now that the COVID restrictions have lifted, but predominantly based over east. So he's been very helpful for us for keeping those contacts up with the broking and finance community in Sydney and Melbourne. He's also involved in a number of other ASX companies. Management, obviously myself, my background is mainly in mining and near mine technical sort of mine geology and exploration roles for open pit and underground. Started in gold, spent quite a bit of time in iron ore, have bounced around nickel, coal and a few other things. My last few years before I joined Star was with Fortescue as a business development guy. So I worked pretty closely with Andrew and the rest of the executive team there, looking at opportunities in Australia and overseas in a range of commodities from further iron ore to copper, gold, lithium, a whole range of things we were looking at. Obviously before the focus for Twiggy kind of went towards hydrogen. So that was where I sort of spent the last few years and got my grounding in the more corporate side of things, I suppose. Deal making, financial modelling, that kind of side of things. And Matt Edmondson, our co-sec, very experienced co-sec, so he's been very good at keeping me on the straight and narrow, making sure that we do everything right. So why Star? yeah, it's a pretty simple value proposition from our point of view. Our focus is obviously on gold and copper. You know, there's been some turmoil in the markets over the last couple of months, but I think the fundamentals of both of those things remain very strong. Gold, especially in Australian dollar terms, remains very strong. You know, it's still, you know, near historic highs. And copper, you know, has seen some of the wind come out of its sails, but it still remains in a pretty good position. And I think, you know, going forward, the thematic kind of pressures behind copper are still very strong. Electrification of the grid, increase in renewable energy, all of that stuff is going to push for more and more copper consumption. So we think that remains, you know, very solid. Our point of difference to a lot of the other juniors that kind of listed around the same time we did, rather than just have moose pasture, we've got actual ground with you know, a resource in it. So we've got an existing resource at Tumblegum South. We obviously have all the work that Briar did on that, and we've been able to leverage off that, quickly kind of continue the drilling that we needed to do, and start the necessary environmental permitting and engineering studies so that we can work out how to get it into production. And how we're going to get it into production is something that's quite straightforward. In Western Australia, is quite common to use a contract mine fleet, and then to do a JV or mine gate sale to a mill that's going to process the dirt. So we've got a very low capex model, because we're not going to buy our own fleet of trucks, and we're not going to build our own process plant. So, you know, other people that we've talked to from various other countries possibly don't understand that, but it's something that's very common here in Western Australia. There's a lot of infrastructure set up for mining. It's good road networks, and you know, it's an easy way for us to do things without having to reinvent the wheel and build everything ourselves. And the other thing worth noting is that, you know, as we spun out of Briar, which itself spun out of Australian Vanadium, we operate something of a shared services model. So we share an office building with those two companies. Means our back office functions are shared between all three companies, and that staff, rather than me having to go out and get a contract kind of workforce every time I want to do something, because obviously it would be very hard to justify having a big headcount as a junior miner. As they're sort of spread between all the companies, we can actually justify having people on staff, and that means that, you know, we can get things done far more quickly because we've got the people in house, and also that we keep the skills and knowledge that we generate from doing this work, we keep it in house. So it makes it, you know, it just has better and better returns. Means the next time we do work, it's even more effective. So that's a very big positive for us. So the projects themselves, like I said, Tumblegum South, that's our gold resource. It's approximately 40 k's south of Meekatharra. And the West Briar project is a big patch of exploration ground that we've got, almost 350 square k's. And that's about 140 k's north of Meekatharra. Meekatharra, for those that aren't familiar with it, is you know, one of the sort of, you know, traditional outback service towns that you find scattered around through Western Australia. It's certainly not what you'd call a holiday destination, but it has, you know, excellent services. There's an airport there, there's a number of hotels, supermarkets, petrol stations, all the stuff you need to actually support you when you're out working in the field. So yeah, look, it's no Club Med, but it is actually really helpful to us to, you know, be able to be in a location that's got those services. It makes it a lot easier for us to do the work. So operationally, you know, we hit the ground running as soon as we listed late last year. 2 days after listing, the rig was on the road. We were there on site prepping up the pads and getting ready to go. And you know, a day after that, we were drilling holes in the ground. So very fast start based on the fact that we could, you know, leverage off relationships that myself and others in the wider group had sort of in the wider industry. Meant we could get things going really fast. So meant we're very successful with that first phase of drilling. The results and the logging that we did there, obviously we used that for our second phase, which we completed in May. Assays for that are still returning, so I can't talk to those numbers, unfortunately. We'll be looking to release that very early next week once we get all the assays returned. But suffice to say, you know, it's confirmed what we thought we would see from the work that Briar had done. And, you know, we're very happy with how that's progressed. We've also started some of the exploration work in the West Briar property. We've done some soil sampling and some ground magnetic survey work up there as well. So we'll be able to talk to those results in a bit more detail when we get the announcement out next week as well. Like I said, we've done, you know, 2 phases of drilling at Tumblegum South. So that drilling is now essentially complete for the work that we need to do. We understand pretty well what we've got in the ground there, what the resource is going to look like, and we've got a pretty good handle on the geology and how we're going to approach it. So we may, based on advice from the people looking after approvals, we may end up doing a couple of diamond holes for geotechnical purposes, but at this stage we don't need to. So we'll see how we go there. Diamond holes, you know, not a real drama for us to organise. We've got relationships with a number of contractors that can take care of that work for us. So you know, we can't see that being a major drama. And look, there's a part of me that would be really interested in seeing what the core would look like. So so we may end up doing that as well. But yeah, like I said, you know, we've got good knowledge based on the drilling we've done and a good understanding of what it's all going to look like. I won't go into these details too much. There'll be a new version of this table that'll be done up when the second load of assays are announced next week. Suffice to say, you know, we got some good hits in the places we expected. A number of the holes had sort of, you know, multiple intervals, sort of describes the stacked loads that we kind of predicted we'd see. That's exactly what we saw when we did the drilling. So it was a successful kind of exercise, the first phase of work. Again, this is you know, just going through a bit more detail of the hole that you saw in the previous slide, just showing exactly, you know, how pervasive sort of the gold is through it. So it's quite wide intervals there. Nice, big, lends itself to open pit mining. So pretty promising for us. And, you know, just a plan view that shows it in a bit more detail as well. So phase 2, this is basically a series of holes. You can see the existing drilling there with the yellow collars and the black tails, basically to show the drill trace. And then we've done another phase of work that's basically infilling around that work, and also doing some holes that were basically extensions to find if the mineralization continued at depth. So that was what phase 2 was all about, just to get, you know, better knowledge on exactly what the geology was. So if you can imagine here in this cross section, a lot of the you know, further holes that we did essentially went, you know, basically just to confirm that where we thought it was open, it actually remains open. The drilling has found more mineralization, and yeah, we'll be able to talk about that in more detail next week. Corporate activities, number of things like just the humdrum day-to-day stuff, getting various contracts and everything else sorted out. Probably the more exciting thing we've been doing is talking to a number of parties that have got a range of assets sort of around the region. And we announced this morning that we've signed an option agreement for what's called the Star of the East deposit. It's around 2 k's away from us at Tumblegum South, so practically next door by mining standards. It's a historical operation that was mined late in the 19th century, so it's got a lot of history, especially for the part of the world we're in, and mined around 27,000 ounces came out over about 4 or 5 years of operation. It was small scale. A lot of that's to do with, you can imagine, the cost profile of an operation in the late 19th century would have been very different to what we operate with now. Those guys were looking for pretty exclusively ounce dirt, so material that was over 30 grams a ton. And what we've seen traditionally here in WA, when you look at some of those areas that had historic mining, when you go back and look at them with kind of modern exploration methods, you'll find the gold endowment generally quite a bit bigger than what the old timers sort of played around with. They needed very high grades. The gold was sold pretty much straight to the government at a fixed price, and they were doing everything with steam power if they were lucky, but most often just purely human horsepower. So very different situation, and we're very confident that when we get a chance to get in there, we've already started looking at the historical kind of sections and level plans that we've got from the vendor, and that's given us some information that we've used to plan out the first drilling program. Essentially, we're just waiting on the final approval to come back from the government to make sure we've got a permit to go and work there. And then we'll be able to drill pretty much straight away. So we're really looking forward to that. We think it's a really good fit based on, what we've already done with Tumblegum South. We've got a good knowledge of the geology of the area, so we'll be able to kind of leverage that and expand our knowledge and hopefully expand our resource as well at Star of the East. And we envisage pretty much developing that up in a similar kind of pattern to Tumblegum. Just do the work, figure out what we've got there, and then work out ways to bring it into production, at low cost. There's a number of other projects we're looking at as well. And I would envisage, now that we've done a deal, it makes it more apparent to counterparties that we're out there and we're looking to do things and make things happen. So I would think we'll see more opportunities come our way. As I said, here's Star of the East. So it fits in perfectly with the Tumblegum approach. You can see the old head frame and set up over the shaft there, 2 k's away from Tumblegum South. So, very easy for us to operate in. I mean, I've already driven around that area when I was up at Tumblegum. We drove through and had a look at it to make sure it was what we thought it was. It's a low risk way for us to kind of build off what we've already been doing. Next steps for us, we'll complete the Tumblegum South work that we've got to do, especially once the assays come back. We'll have a pretty good handle on exactly what we have there. We'll be able to complete all the modelling and resource work, hand it over to the engineers to come up with a proper design, and then we'll be able to make sure we've got all of the technical kind of boxes ticked, and then make sure we've got all the environmental approvals and everything else squared away as well. And keep our discussions going on to find a suitable partner to work with. And with the West Briar, we'll be starting to really ramp up our efforts there. Obviously, as we don't need to do as much drilling at Tumblegum South, we'll be able to put our efforts into Star of the East and the West Briar. So that'll be what the intention is there. And we'll basically just continue to look for opportunities to add ounces where we can, whether that's through discovery, acquisition, JVs. We're open to anything as long as it makes business sense. I would take any meeting and talk to anyone, no matter how harebrained the idea might seem at first. Often, you can find a path forward and a good way to operate together. So we'll keep working away like that. Indicative activities. I've left this in here just as it's based on what we sort of set out in the prospectus, and I think it's important just to make sure people are aware. This is essentially the plan that we're still following. We're still working towards this and making sure we're doing the right thing. Obviously, the first year there's big sort of whacks of cash that come out for various parts of it: transfer duty, the cost of the offer, payments to vendors, and then year two it's a little bit more steady state. But we've managed to do things quite a bit cheaper with respect to Tumblegum South. We could use more of the work that had been done previously, so we saved some money there. We've been pretty fierce at cost control and making sure admin costs don't blow out. So we're in a very good position cash wise. Just to make it a bit easier for people just to visualize what we're talking about with the West Briar, you can see basically on the other side of this sort of folded structure is basically where DeGrussa and Monty are. Peak Hill is essentially kind of the center of this large kind of anti-form structure. And the Narracuda Formation that hosts a lot of the mineralization here, we've got really good exposure of that, not just on its own, but also where it's rammed up into and shared along a lot of the other units in the area. So that's what we want to see. We want to see that kind of fertile host rock in areas where it's kind of been smashed up and mushed around. So it's got the heat, it's got fluids and everything else kind of working through it. We think that it's going to be a very prospective area for us to work in. So we'll keep working our way there. And we'll just try and remain sensible. There's a lot of things going on in the world. Unfortunately, Ukraine and Russia keeps rumbling along. So I can't help but think that's going to have an impact further on the gold price, and probably inevitably in the wider kind of economic circles that'll affect copper as well. And this is just to really make clear to people kind of what we see as our preferred kind of pathway. Exploration, obviously, pretty self-explanatory, but we've kind of taken that to the next stage with Tumblegum, actually developing the resource rather than just trying to find targets to sort of get started on. We're a few steps down the road. Build. I've put across there to say, well, we're not building anything, and then a tick there to say why that's a good thing. We don't have any real desire to build, a Tonka toy just for the sake of it. If it made sense and was the right option, then of course we'll build a process facility. But given where we operate and the number of facilities around us, building one just so I can say that I've got one seems a bit perverse. So we'll prefer to go with a low capex model. That means we don't have to go through the permitting heartache and the hassle and the time that it takes to get that done, and then obviously the cost and delays that you get when you're trying to build your own process plant. And then we'll just work out the appropriate deal with anyone we partner with. So, you know, that's sort of the heart of what we're doing, the low capex model. And as for mining, you know, we've already got the mining lease granted at Tumblegum South. The approval process is underway. The area that we're working in has historically been sort of active mine sites and the fringes of it. So the ground's disturbed. There's no flora or fauna reserves, and there's no native title considerations for Tumblegum South. So it's a pretty streamlined process there. So just in summary, that's where we're at. You know, we've smacked out our first round of drilling. Assays will be coming back from the second round soon. Tumblegum South will accelerate away what we've got to do there. The West Briar will really start getting into things in the next couple of months. And corporately, you know, we've done our first deal, and we're open to any other opportunities that may come up. So that's where we're at, and that's where we're going to keep going. And look, there's just some contact details if anyone else would like, you know, any more detail or would like to reach out to me to discuss Star or anything else, then that's how you get hold of us. So yeah, thanks very much.